So the Hummer H2 fuel inlet valve was leaking, and I'm going to show you guys how to fix that. Also going to end up showing you how to replace the fuel pump, since you have to take that out anyways, and how to lower the tank and the connections you need to take apart to get this to come out. This is a really simple process. It takes a total of 2 hours very first time. If you can change your oil and you've ever changed a brake, you are good to go for this project. Really simple tools, a couple extensions for your ratchets, and a couple 10 millimeter sockets and wrenches, and that's all you're going to need. A razor blade, a chisel, and order a couple parts here. You're going to need 2 jacks. We'll make it really simple. You could get away with one in the middle of the tank, but it would be really hard to control lowering it down the way you kind of need to get it to just slide out really easily. And you're definitely going to want to run your tank dry if you have that option. I ran mine down until I had like 10 miles left on the miles left. And if not, once you take off that rear fuel line, you may want to siphon the gas out if you have a full tank. If you're stuck with that, the tank, even with about 5 gallons of fuel, and it's really awkward and heavy, and it will want to slosh and hit and knock itself off of your supports. Other than that, really simple. Grab yourself a couple quilts to lay on top of, 2 jacks. I put the truck up on 2 wooden blocks and used the jacks for the fuel tank. And just a couple other notes. You're going to want to have some good ventilation. When you pull these parts off, the fumes coming out of that tank are going to be crazy. I did this on the side where I had a good breeze, and I had the fumes blown away from me pretty well the whole time, except for when I had to be directly over the tank. All right, here's my leaking fuel tank from my Hummer. The fill neck port, when they injection melted this in, I think it was put on after the tank's made, they fused it on. A tiny thin piece of plastic was all that was sealed on the bottom, and it cracked open and started leaking. Luckily, somebody makes a part to fix this. You got to go in from the fuel tank, from the fuel pump, and then we'll put the giant nut on the outside and tighten it down. I got a couple of gaskets that it comes with. A couple notes when you're taking the tank down. First, you'll remove this clamp, and then what you'll do through the wheel well, then you will, really easy to squeeze fitting on this, the easiest one out of them all, squeeze it and disconnect the vent line that goes up the fuel line. You're going to leave this attached, and you're going to disconnect this vapor canister line, and that's all you got to remove for the connections to the tank before lowering it. Alright, to start removing the fuel tank, you need to take out your wheel liner. Very simple, easy process. Remove all the bolts on the fender and the 2 plastic ones down here. Then you have 2 extras. Once you take off the flare, you're going to have an extra bolt here and one here that is holding the wheel liner on. Take out the plastic pins and 1 screw, and that falls right off. Then you'll have good access right to where your tank will be for the connections on top. You do not need to remove the connections on top until you lower the fuel tank. It makes it really easy. Okay, I lifted the Hummer up on my wooden ramps I use for oil changes, and I don't have the big old Nerf bar, which I would take off if I was doing this, because that thing would crush you if anything slipped. And then you're going to remove the skid guard on the fuel tank. It's 3 bolts. There's 1, 2, 3, and then you have a nut on top. When you slide under the truck, you will easily see where these rivets are. All you need is a 10 millimeter mini socket or a ratchet wrench, and you'll pop that right off. This just comes down. This is really heavy. It's fiberglass. Then when you go to lower the tank, you're going to have 2 straps holding the tank up. You'll take your jacks I had a 2x4 underneath the bottom of this one with a jack on it, and the same thing on this side, right about here. 2 bolts, the straps fall right off, and then you literally just gently lower the tank and drop it to the ground. You have plenty of flex in this line. This line will just be sitting up like this, attached to the fuel rail on the frame. And then simply squeeze it, and it'll pop right off that. And then you're done. That's all it takes to remove this tank. Simple enough, and I didn't feel like farming this out to a shop, and I would end up with $1,000 in new fuel lines I'd have to buy. I actually did break this by accident, so this is $99, and I think this is the only line on this whole tank we could actually still buy for the Hummers. Gonna replace my original fuel pump while I'm at it, and that's it. Really simple to do. It's not much worse than changing your oil, to be honest. It's about 45 minutes under the truck and this thing is out. So just a couple notes. You are going to have to hit this really hard, especially if it's the original like mine was. It did not want to let go. At the same time, I was trying to be really careful and disperse the hitting around all the tabs, because I did not want to break the metal locking tabs that are molded into the plastic. So using that rubber mallet with a brass punch, you're going to lose a lot of the force, so it's going to take a little bit extra. It seems like a lot, but it's actually not that bad. You're also going to want to get a handful of like the blue paper towels or a giant rag, and just hold that in your hand, cover about half the hole, and get some canned air, dust off the dirt, and grab a can of Rust-Oleum, and I sprayed the locking metal tabs with that to give them some protection because they were starting to rust. Really easy to do. There's no reason to seal up the tank or do all this crazy taping or anything. Just do that 2 or 3 times and you'll get all of it sprayed and cleaned, and nothing will go in the tank. And if you drop the paper towels, just grab them out of the tank, and that's all you'd have to do. So here is the new fuel inlet valve. It's got a couple of O-rings already put on it. Slide it in from the inside, pull it through, put on your 2 washers, tighten down the nut, grab a big old wrench, start snugging it. I didn't make it too tight. The tank moves a lot, the O-rings move, the big rubber gasket on the outside moves. I highly doubt it would start to leak. You could easily tighten this after the fact if you had to once the tank's installed, so I did not want to take a chance to break anything. Also, just so you know, there are 2 different fuel pumps listed for the Hummers. The 03 is its own part number, and I believe 04 and up is the same. The fuel pump is spring loaded. When you push it in, it will have some resistance. You'll have to hold it down when you start the lock ring on the fuel pump. I ended up going with the Delphi pump, which is made by GM. It looked to be like a factory part. It did come with a O-ring. You do not have to buy an extra one. I did buy a new locking ring for $10, so I didn't have to fuss with the rusty one, and that was definitely worth it. So you have to hold the pump down and then get the ring to click in place, and the pump is keyed to the tank, so it can only go in one direction. The O-ring will have some resistance to it. It does make it hard to get the lock ring to tighten down. I did put some grease on all the contact points, and that seemed to help a little bit, but you're gonna have to hit this really hard for it to lock into the final position. It's a little scary, but it wasn't too bad, and you know, just don't hit on it with a huge hammer and like a direct metal chisel or a punch. I would be scared of breaking the plastic. They do sell a tool on Amazon for the lock ring that you would use a wrench with. I think I would try that next time for 15 bucks. I didn't realize it till after the fact. It might be safer. It may or may not work. Who knows? Here's the 2 fuel pumps side by side, so you could see the difference between them. Almost everything was identical except for a couple little changes, the motors, the wires, the way it was wrapped. It just totally looks like the same Delphi pump from the original one. One other note, after I put the everything back together and fired up the truck, my gauge was off really bad. I filled it up and it was showing over a quarter of a tank off, and I let it go down to almost empty, filled it up again, and by then I think it self-calibrates itself. So I'm only about a gallon off when I fill up now, compared to what the meter tells me for my gallons used. So it worked itself out. All right, I hope you liked this video. I hope it helped you out. It just makes a lot of sense to do this yourself if you can. The fuel pumps, $250 on Amazon, lock ring $10. I had to end up buying a $100 hose, and the fitting you could get away with the $100 doorman part. I elected to spend $150 for a US made part that is in the description below. The gentleman was awesome. When I called his phone number in New Jersey on like a random Saturday morning, he actually answered it and told me the part would fit the Hummer, and it was kind of cool having somebody to call like that, and the guy makes it in his machine shop. So support a nice U.S. business for that part. Really nice, really over-engineered part. Definitely worth it. And verse, I think it's about 4 hours total, plus whatever you'd have to pay for parts, plus that's if they didn't start breaking all the other little special parts that Hummer has. So this for literally, even if it took you a whole half a day for 6 hours, you're getting this done for about $350 to $400, and if you don't, that's without breaking a line. And it'll be done right. Your paint won't be ruined, your tank won't be ruined, your fuel lines won't be ruined, and you won't have to drop the truck off for a day or two. So definitely don't be scared of this. The only one thing that really would scare me, my other Hummer has the factory Nerf bars, and if those were on there, I would probably take those off just so I didn't have to think about those being right above me if something did happen or the truck shifted. My other Hummer, they just sit right there, and they're literally only a couple inches off the ground, it seems like, and that kind of freaks me out. Other than that, this was a really easy project. There's nothing hard about this, so have fun.